What happens when a CEO checks into one of his own hotels undercover and sees his guests treated like garbage just because they don't speak perfect English? Kellan Parker stood in front of the mirror in the airport bathroom, adjusting the black-rimmed glasses and graying wig. A little aged makeup around his eyes, a tucked-in polo, and a second-hand suitcase completed the look. He looked like a tired, traveling salesman instead of the 38-year-old CEO of a 16-location hotel chain he'd inherited from his father. No one at the downtown Houston location had ever met him in person. It had always been handled by the district manager, with the local manager reporting directly to corporate. That's why this was the perfect spot to visit. He'd received a few vague complaints, mostly about sloppy service and long wait times, but nothing that screamed emergency. Still, something didn't sit right. He'd built his father's business into something bigger, something he was proud of, but lately it felt like the bigger it got, the further he was drifting from the ground floor. Kellan booked a 3-night stay under the name Carl Pena, using a burner email and prepaid card. He didn't want special treatment. He wanted real answers. He arrived at the hotel around 4:10 p.m., pulling his wheeled suitcase behind him. The lobby looked fine at first glance, clean, modern, but it felt cold. The front desk had a young man typing away on a computer. Behind him stood a woman, maybe in her early 30s, arms crossed, watching everything like a hawk. "Next," the woman said without looking up. Kellan stepped forward. "Hi, checking in, last name Pena." She glanced at him, then back at the screen. "You booked through a third party." "Yes." She sighed. "We've been having issues with those. You'll have to wait, you're too early." "It's after 4. "We're backed up. Housekeeping's short today," she said, barely hiding her annoyance. "How long is the wait?" She didn't answer. She turned to the young man beside her. "Bryce, go check if 503 is ready." Bryce nodded and disappeared through a door. A couple came in behind Kellan, middle-aged, soft-spoken, holding hands. They looked unsure, and when they reached the front desk, the woman spoke softly, with a Spanish accent. "Hello, we have Reserva, Tian." The woman at the desk, her name tag said manager. Tessa looked them up and down. "English." The man beside the woman stepped in. "We speak little English. Reservacion she." Tessa tilted her head and spoke slower, louder. "You have reservation." The woman nodded quickly. Tessa rolled her eyes. "Can't help you if you don't speak English. Maybe try again when someone's with you who can." Kellan froze. The couple looked embarrassed, apologizing in broken phrases before walking toward the seating area near the elevators, heads down. No one helped them. Bryce returned. "Room 503 clean." "Fine, give it to him," Tessa said, nodding at Kellan. "Just make sure he doesn't complain if anything's missing." Kellan took the keycard without a word, heart pounding. What he just saw wasn't just unprofessional, it was cruel. He rode the elevator up and entered a basic but clean room. He tossed the suitcase on the bed and sat down, jaw tight. He thought about those guests downstairs. How many others had been treated like that? How many just walked away, humiliated? He didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe today was just bad timing. Maybe Tessa was having a rough day. But he needed to know more. So he decided to spend the next few days not just as a guest, but as a shadow, observing everything. The next morning, he grabbed free breakfast in the lobby. A young woman named Vanessa was behind the counter, politely handing out coffee and muffins, smiling even when people ignored her. "Morning," she said to him, cheerful but tired. "Morning, you always this chipper before 7. She laughed, "Only when I beat the coffee machine." She was kind to everyone. Even when a guest spilled orange juice all over the counter, she cleaned it up quietly and told him not to worry. Later, Kellan sat in the lobby pretending to fill out paperwork while watching interactions. The same pattern kept showing up. If a guest spoke fluent English, they were treated fine. If they didn't, especially if they struggled, Tessa became impatient, dismissive, sometimes downright rude. At one point, a family with 2 young kids came in. The father tried to ask about parking, but stumbled over his words. Tessa cut him off mid-sentence. "I don't have time for this. Come back when you know what you're asking." Kellan stood up, fists clenched. Bryce quietly pulled the man aside and explained the parking situation in simple words, even drawing a little map on hotel notepad paper. The man smiled, grateful. Kellan watched Bryce and Vanessa closely. They didn't say much, but it was clear they were doing their best in a lousy environment. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all the people who'd been treated like trash just because they weren't fluent. His own grandparents were immigrants. If they had walked into this place, they would have been treated the same way. He had 2 more days to gather everything he needed, but he already knew something big had to change. At 6:45 the next morning, Kellan stood silently just outside the employee entrance, leaning against the cool brick wall of the service alley. The rising sun cast long shadows down the narrow corridor where hotel staff came and went. He wasn't supposed to be there, technically, but he wanted to see who actually opened the hotel, who showed up early, who hustled without recognition. The first person to arrive was a petite woman in a faded navy hoodie, pulling her badge from her pocket as she approached the door. Her name tag was tucked into her front pocket. Clara, housekeeping. She looked tired, but she moved with the kind of natural rhythm that came from doing the same thing every day without needing to think about it. Next came a man in a food service uniform, unlocking the door with his access card and holding it open for her. Kellan followed them inside discreetly and took the service elevator up to the 3rd floor, where he waited in the hallway, leaning against the wall outside the linen closet. He watched Clara fetch her cart and supplies with practiced efficiency. Her eyes were puffy, but her movements were clean and methodical. "Morning," Kellan said as she passed. She looked surprised for a moment, then nodded politely. "Morning." "Rough start." She hesitated, "Just a long week." He raised an eyebrow. "It's only Wednesday." Clara gave a faint, tired laugh. "Exactly." He let her continue on her route and returned to the lobby, where a steady trickle of guests was forming at the front desk. Tessa hadn't arrived yet, and Bryce was handling the early crowd alone. One guest was trying to check out, another asked about airport shuttles, and a third was holding a broken keycard. Bryce was bouncing between them quickly, typing one-handed and answering questions without ever raising his voice. Kellan noticed something odd: a woman in a blazer standing near the front desk, arms crossed, watching Bryce. She wasn't helping, wasn't on the computer, just watching. Every time Bryce made a mistake or took too long, she scribbled something in a small notepad. Bryce caught Kellan's eye briefly, then looked away. There was something uneasy in the way he glanced at the woman. Kellan approached the counter casually. "Coffee machines are of cups again," he said. Bryce nodded quickly. "I'll take care of it in a second, sir. Just wrapping these up." The woman turned slightly. "You can use the lobby bar cups. He knows that." Bryce gave a tight nod and walked off toward the bar area. Kellan turned to the woman. "Are you with the front desk team?" "Assistant manager," she said. "Angela." "You help out during the morning rush?" "I supervise," she replied flatly. "If I jump in every time there's a hiccup, they'll never learn." He tilted his head. "Don't they get formal training?" Angela shrugged. "They're supposed to, but let's be real, some of them just aren't fast learners." Kellan kept his voice neutral. "How long has Bryce been here?" 7 months, still makes rookie mistakes. You'd think he'd pick it up by now." Bryce returned with the cups, handed one to a guest, and continued helping others without saying a word to Angela. Later that morning, Kellan sat at a corner table near the windows, sipping bitter coffee and pretending to scroll through emails. A middle-aged woman in a crisp gray suit walked into the lobby. Her stride was purposeful, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. She stopped in front of the front desk and looked around. Angela spotted her and straightened. "Morning, Ms. Howard." This had to be the district manager. Ms. Howard gave a curt nod. "Where's Tessa?" "Running late, again." "I need her in my office the second she walks in. No more excuses." Angela made a note on her tablet. Ms. Howard turned toward the seating area where Kellan sat. For a moment, he thought she was going to recognize him, but she didn't even glance twice. She disappeared down the hallway toward the back offices. At 9:12, Tessa entered the lobby through the side door, sunglasses still on, a paper cup of coffee in hand. She went straight to the front desk, ignoring the guests waiting in line. "Angela," she said without pausing, "tell them I was in traffic." Angela leaned in. "Ms. Howard's here. She wants to see you now." Tessa's jaw tightened. "Tell her I'll be there in 10. She said now. Tessa rolled her eyes and walked off toward the back, muttering under her breath. By late morning, the lobby had calmed. Kellan walked past the breakfast bar, where Vanessa was wiping down the counter. Her sleeves were rolled up, and her apron had a small tear near the pocket. "You all right?" he asked. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "Yeah, just trying to stay ahead of the mess before the next wave hits." "Does anyone help you with this?" "Sometimes Clara does, if she finishes early, but she's usually doing 2 floors alone." Kellan frowned. "That doesn't sound sustainable." Vanessa shrugged. "It's not, but they cut 2 positions last month, said occupancy was down, so we had to make do." He noticed her hands red and dry from constant wiping, the skin near her knuckles cracked. "You ever get breaks?" "Legally, sure." Kellan leaned on the counter and lowered his voice. "What happens if you take one?" Vanessa looked around, then smiled without humor. "Let's just say Angela keeps track." That afternoon, Kellan sat on a bench outside the hotel, watching the front entrance. A large SUV pulled up, and a family of 4 stepped out. The father was tall, mid-40s, with dark skin and a short beard. His daughter clutched a stuffed animal, and his wife was wearing a headscarf, adjusting it gently as she exited the vehicle. They entered the lobby together. Angela was at the desk. The man approached with a smile. "Hi, checking in. The reservation should be under Khalid." Angela typed for a moment. 1 king, 2 knights. "Yes, that's right." She printed the room key and slid it across the counter. "ID and credit card." He handed them over. Angela examined the ID for a beat longer than necessary. "You paying with this card?" "Yes." She looked at him, then at the woman beside him. "We'll need a cash deposit too." Khalid raised an eyebrow. The reservation said the card was enough. "It's policy," Angela said flatly. "I've stayed at your other locations. Never had to do this before." Angela didn't respond, she just waited. Kellan stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm but firm. "Why does he need to pay a cash deposit?" Angela blinked. "It's for incidentals, standard procedure." "Then why isn't everyone else being asked for one?" Angela paused. "It depends on the profile." "Define profile." She stiffened. "We reserve the right to require deposits based on risk assessment." "You mean based on how someone looks?" Angela's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Kellan turned to Khalid. "Sir, welcome. I'll make sure you're checked in without the deposit. I apologize for the inconvenience." He took the key card and handed it to Khalid directly. Angela opened her mouth to protest, but Kellan raised his ID badge from his pocket and laid it on the counter. Kellan Parker, CEO. Angela's face drained of color. Bryce, standing behind her, froze in place. Vanessa, clearing plates by the window, dropped a spoon. Kellan's voice remained low, but there was steel in it now. I've been here for 2 days, watching how guests are treated, watching how you treat your coworkers. You've just discriminated against a family based on appearance. That's not a gray area. That's immediate grounds for termination. Angela swallowed hard. Didn't mean. Don't, Kellan said. Don't pretend it was a misunderstanding. He stepped back. Hand over your badge, you're done here. Angela fumbled with her lanyard and placed it on the counter. Kellan turned to Bryce. Get the family a complimentary upgrade. Make sure they are comfortable. Bryce nodded and moved quickly. Kellan looked toward the back hallway. There was more to deal with. Tessa wasn't just late and disinterested, she was responsible for the tone of this entire location. And now she was next. Kellan stepped through the hallway behind the front desk, passing framed certificates and outdated promotional posters until he reached the office at the end. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Tessa sat across from MS. Howard, arms folded, expression flat. She's right down the hall, Kellan said, voice steady. Both women turned. MS, Howard stood. Mr. Parker. Her tone shifted instantly, surprised but professional. I wasn't told you were visiting. I didn't announce it, he replied, stepping into the room. I came as a guest. Tessa leaned back in her chair. So this was a setup. No, he said. This was me trying to understand what's been going wrong here. I've seen enough in 2 days to know it's not just a bad week. MS, Howard motioned toward a chair. Would you like to sit? No, he said, this won't take long. He looked at Tessa. You've been running this location for how long? 4 years, she said, unfazed. And in 4 years, did it never register that your staff was stretched to the point of breaking? They know how to manage, she said. Rooms get cleaned, guests get checked in. Not without being insulted or dismissed, he said. I watched you humiliate more than one guest just because they didn't speak English perfectly. You've created an environment where cruelty passes for efficiency. Tessa narrowed her eyes. We deal with difficult people every day. I don't have time to babysit. You're not supposed to babysit, you're supposed to lead. MS, Howard shifted uncomfortably. We've had some complaints, but nothing that raised red flags. Because they were filtered through people like her, he said, nodding at Tessa. You've been measuring success by occupancy and not by experience. That ends today. Tessa scoffed. You don't understand what it's like down here. You show up for 2 days and think you know everything. No, I listened. I watched. I saw Bryce do 3 jobs while being talked down to. I saw Vanessa handle an entire breakfast rush alone. And I saw Clara on the 3rd floor cleaning rooms without gloves because no one's replaced the supply order. Tessa didn't respond. Kellan looked at MS, Howard. I want her dismissed immediately. MS, Howard hesitated, understood. Tessa stood. This place will fall apart without me. Kellan didn't look away. It already has. She walked out without another word. MS, Howard exhaled. I'll process the paperwork now. I'm staying 1 more night, Kellan said. During shift change tomorrow, I want to meet with the entire staff. We need to set things right. He left the office and took the service elevator up to the 4th floor. Clara was outside room 412, kneeling to collect used towels into a linen bag. Her hands moved slower than they had that morning. He approached carefully. Need a hand. She startled, then recognized him. I'm okay. He knelt beside her. You've been on your feet since 7. That's normal, she said quietly. It's not supposed to be. She paused. They said if we cut corners, we'd lose hours. Who said that? Angela. Before her, it was another assistant manager. Same message. He nodded. How many rooms are you covering today? 17. I'm the only one on this floor. That's not sustainable. Clara didn't say anything. She looked tired beyond words. Kellan stood. Take your time finishing. Someone will cover the rest if needed. She looked up. Will I still get paid for the full shift? Yes. He returned to the lobby and found Vanessa restocking the drink fridge beside the reception desk. She was on her knees, tucking bottles into place with quick, practiced motions. Vanessa, he said gently, can you take a 10-minute break? She stood slowly. Is everything okay? Yes, I just want to talk. They sat in the small corner booth near the windows, away from the front desk. You seem to know the flow of this place better than anyone, he said. I've been here almost 2 years. Why haven't you been promoted? She shook her head. They said I wasn't assertive enough. Do you want leadership? I want to be heard, she said. I want to know, can raise a concern without being punished. Kellan leaned forward slightly. Has that happened? She hesitated. Last month, I reported a broken lock on the staff locker room. No one fixed it. A week later, my phone got stolen. They said I should have kept it with me. Did you escalate it? I tried. Angela told me to stop complaining. He nodded slowly. You've earned more than a raise. I don't want a handout. You're not getting one, you're getting recognition. She looked away, swallowing hard. Kellan stood. I'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll talk again after the staff meeting. She nodded, eyes still down. That evening, he walked the halls again. Bryce was on night duty, manning the desk alone. The phone rang nonstop. A guest came down to complain about a TV not working. A delivery guy dropped off linens and demanded a signature. Bryce handled it all without flinching. Kellan waited until the lobby cleared. You've been steady all day, he said. Bryce turned, just trying to get through it. You want to stay here long term. Bryce hesitated. I like the job, I like people, but it's hard to stay optimistic. What's the hardest part? The silence, Bryce said. When something's wrong and everyone sees it but no one says anything. And when you do speak up, you get sidelined. Who sidelined you? Angela mostly. Tessa ignored everything. Kellan nodded. That's over now. Bryce looked confused. What do you mean? I removed them both today. Bryce blinked. Seriously. You've been doing the work of 2 people. That changes starting tomorrow. Bryce leaned on the counter, processing. Thank you. You're going to help train the next front desk lead, Kellan said, and you'll be compensated for it. Bryce smiled faintly, then stopped himself. Are you planning to visit the other locations too? I might. He turned, heading toward the elevator. Tomorrow, he'd face the entire staff and lay out a new plan, not just for this hotel, but as a model for every branch moving forward. The system only worked if the people at the top stayed connected to the ground floor. Somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten that. But he wasn't going to forget again. The next morning, the conference room on the second floor was filled with tension as staff filtered in, unsure of what to expect. Word had spread fast Angela and Tessa were gone, and the CEO himself was behind it. People sat in folding chairs around the long table, some whispering, others silent. Bryce stood near the door, arms crossed, while Vanessa leaned against the wall beside the coffee station, still in her uniform. Clara arrived last, hair damp from the quick shower she managed. Kellan entered at exactly 8:30, dressed simply in a dark sweater and slacks, no security, no entourage. He closed the door behind him and walked to the center of the room. "Thanks for being here," he said, letting the words settle before continuing. "I know this week hasn't been normal. You've had people watching, questioning, and now you've seen leadership removed. That doesn't happen unless something's gone very wrong." No one spoke. He looked around the room, meeting eyes one by one. "I came here because I didn't trust the reports I was getting. They looked clean metrics, numbers, conversion rates, but none of that tells you how it feels to work here, or how it feels to walk through those doors as a guest." A few people nodded slightly. "I saw things that don't belong in this company. I saw guests treated with contempt because of their accents. I saw staff spoken to like they were disposable, and I saw some of the hardest working people I've ever met being ignored or micromanaged into silence." A man in the back raised his hand. Kellan nodded to him. "I'm Marcus," he said. "Maintenance. I've been here 6 years. I reported some of that stuff months ago. No one called me back." "That changes now," Kellan said. "We're building a different process. Starting today, complaints from staff will go directly to a new internal line monitored by someone outside your chain of command. You won't be talking to whoever's causing the problem, you'll be talking to someone who can fix it." Vanessa stepped forward slightly. "What about hours? They cut mine last month with no warning. I only found out when I checked the schedule." Kellan turned to her. "That's being reviewed. We can't promise full-time shifts for everyone overnight, but we're reinstating the hours that were cut without proper cause. And moving forward, all changes will require written explanation and approval from a regional HR rep." Clara shifted in her seat. "Are we getting a new general manager?" "You are," he said, "but not right away. For now, MS. Howard will be overseeing operations directly while we interview candidates. And when we do hire, it won't be someone who only knows how to manage spreadsheets, it'll be someone who knows what it means to lead people." A housekeeper named Danny spoke up next. "We've been short 2 people for months. Every week they say someone's coming, but no one shows." "That's on us," Kellan said. "We let poor leadership create a bottleneck in hiring. HR's already flagged this location as a priority. We'll be bringing in applicants from 2 nearby branches to help cover until you're fully staffed. No more empty promises." Bryce looked over. "Are you planning to do this at other hotels too?" "Yes," Kellan said. "This was never about one property. It was about figuring out where the system broke. And it broke when we stopped listening." He stepped back and let the silence carry for a moment before continuing. "Here's what's next. Effective immediately, Bryce will serve as interim front desk lead. He'll be given authority to make scheduling decisions, and he'll be trained for a permanent supervisory role if he wants it." Bryce straightened, clearly surprised. "Vanessa," Kellan said, "you're being moved to a dual-role guest services and operations assistant. You'll have access to the training portal we use for managers and a stipend to help with transportation if you're staying late." Vanessa nodded, eyes locked on the floor. "And Clara," he said gently, "HR will be reaching out to adjust your hours to something more sustainable. You'll also be assigned a trainee to shadow your route next week. You shouldn't be doing 17 rooms alone." Clara looked up slowly. "I thought we didn't have enough people." "We don't," he said. "But we're not going to solve that by breaking the ones we do have. We'll rotate floaters from other locations until your team is staffed properly." Marcus raised his hand again. "Are we supposed to believe this is permanent? We've heard talk before, then it fades." Kellan looked him in the eye. "You'll believe it when you see it. We're not asking for trust. We're going to earn it." He nodded to MS. Howard, who stepped forward. "There will be a formal memo outlining all changes by end of day," she said. "My contact information will be posted in the break room. If you've got concerns, you come directly to me. No more filtering through middle management. Kellan turned back to the group. I know this doesn't fix everything. Some of you are exhausted, some of you are angry, and some of you probably still think this is a show. But if you're willing to give us a few weeks, we'll show you what it looks like when leadership actually shows up. He stepped away from the table. That's it, you don't need to stay. You've got work to do, and now, so do we. As people stood and began to file out, Kellan caught Bryce by the arm. I know this is sudden. You okay stepping up? Bryce nodded slowly. I think so. I've got ideas, things that could help. Good, make a list. We'll review it tomorrow. Vanessa lingered near the door. Kellan turned to her. You handled that breakfast bar like it was a battlefield. She chuckled under her breath. Half the time it is. He smiled. We'll get you back up. You shouldn't have to field it alone. She gave a short nod, then walked out, shoulders a little higher than when she entered. Later that afternoon, Kellan walked the halls one last time. He passed Clara outside a guest room, this time with another woman beside her, clearly a new trainee shadowing her steps. He didn't interrupt. He stopped by the lobby where Bryce was calmly walking a guest through a refund process, his voice steady and professional. Behind him, Vanessa was reloading the snack shelf, chatting quietly with a child who had just dropped a bag of chips. It was still far from perfect. The building still needed repairs, staff still looked tired, but something had shifted. Not just in structure, but in tone. It was quieter but stronger, like the weight had moved just enough for people to breathe again. As he stepped outside and turned to get into the waiting car, he paused to look back at the glass doors. The logo above them was the same, but the place behind it finally felt like something he could stand behind again. This time, from the ground up,